Hi everyone, it's Jerry. This is a round 3 game from the 2016 Candidates Tournament between Veselin Topalov playing on the white end and Levon Aronian. Going into this round, Topalov has a half a point in the tournament standings and Aronian has 1 point. Let's see what round 3 would bring. Game opens with c4 by Topalov, Aronian replying knight f6. We have on board the creatively named English 4 knights. Who decided on that one? White goes for a kingside fianchetto, bishop b4, bishop g2, and after castles, knight d5. This is a sharp continuation. Only 6 moves in. White is looking to strike an imbalance and knight for bishop exchange. How to reply? Aronian elects for e4, a move we may describe as the critical reply to knight d5 or the principled reply. It's the move that looks to take advantage of the weakness or gap connected with White's last move. White no longer has control over e4 by playing knight d5. And so Black takes this opportunity to push in the center with e4, grab some space, do so with tempo, and inconvenience the knight who is now sidelined and lacking some squares. After d6, sure enough, we do have this knight for bishop exchange. Doing something other than that, as an example, if you're going pawn hunting, this is not to be recommended because White is still way behind development-wise, and the black pieces are really coming to life with great effect, with tempo in this case. Play to f3, and how are you ever getting castled? You play to g2, and what are you doing about e2? Not a good decision, in short, to go pawn hunting. So in the game it was knight takes bishop, knight takes knight, and with that, Topalov says, I have the 2 bishops. And Aronian comes back with, well, I have some space in the center, an e4 pawn that is cramping. I also have a slight edge development-wise, and said sarcastically, I really like your knight on h4. He's doing wonderful things. My main point is that these are some of the factors to consider when weighing or assessing this position. Okay. What follows is White giving the knight a kick. Get out of my position. Knight c6. And now what do? We castle, of course. We have to castle at some point, so we castle. Not so fast. It's important to play d3. If you want to go with routine moves, your knight will suffer. g5 traps the knight. So d3 strikes at the pawn and stops g5. d5 by Black, a move that may seem a bit counterintuitive because White has the 2 bishops and it is Black who is welcoming some more pawn exchanges. But again, it is Black, keep in mind, who has some edge development-wise, and so welcoming exchanges is something to consider. d5 it is. Now White castles. E takes d, and White replies with queen takes d, and with this is signing up for well, they are open to the loss of a pawn. They're giving up a pawn by capturing on d3 with the queen. Knight to e5 is played next, and after queen d4, knight takes c4. Is this a blunder? No, it's calculated. White is weighing that there is compensation in the form of the 2 bishops, despite being down a pawn. What might have kept White from capturing on d3 with the pawn? It's a good question. For one, you like how I'm just asking the questions and answering them? I just asked the question and then said it was a good question. I gotta stop with that. Anyhow, why not take with the pawn on d3? Well, he might just turn out to be a, sitting duck. He's quite vulnerable on d3. He could be targeted. Also, a knight on e4, he might be a tough piece to get rid of. Additionally, by capturing on d3, this might help facilitate the development for the black side. Bishop g4 now can be played with tempo, and maybe there a follow-up bishop e2 might hit. So these are some of the things that may have been running through White's mind here, not allowing, not converting your e pawn to a d pawn, not allowing bishop g4 with tempo, things along these lines. Okay, so in the game it was queen takes d, knight to e5, queen d4, and knight takes c. Queen to d4, at least in the computer's eyes, is not considered best. The computer prefers this more reserved queen to c2. Queen d4, I mean, I could see why you would want to make a move like queen to d4 because it moves forward, it's throwing a punch, and is giving some more direction to the black side, right? There aren't as many replies by black after queen to d4. However, even by playing queen to c2, you could pretty much be assured what it is black is going to do anyhow. They're going to go ahead and scoop up the c pawn with knight takes c. As it turns out, the queen on c2, the queen post on c2 would have been better. In the game, it was queen to d4, and after knight takes c, we have e4. White is looking to undermine the black center, looking to undermine the knight. Pawn takes pawn is, of course, no good. That drops the knight. Bishop e6, getting some development in. b3 kicks the knight. Knight a5 is counter-striking against b3, looking for a fork. White replies with another counterpunch, defense, and attack. Knight c6. And now we have queen to d1. So what to do about this pin here? What would you do in this position as black? If you'd like to, go ahead, pause the video, see what move you would play in this position as black. Okay, the move played in the game was knight takes e4. And you could have a quick glance at the clock times here. Topalov has clearly gone into the think tank up until this point. A lot of time has been invested. And this knight can be taken, but there is a little trick. Notice the rook on a1 is unprotected. And so I believe that this idea was simply missed. After rook to d1, you can, as black, take on e4. Bishop takes knight, we of course would not take right back because you lose the queen. If bishop takes knight in this position, black would play queen f6. What's happening here? First and foremost, you're getting out of the pin and throwing a strike at the rook on a1. And you can next scoop up the bishop. Rook b1, only now take the bishop. And yikes, this is really scary. Weaknesses on the king side. Short story here is that there's some miscalculation. Rook to d1, I believe, overlooked that black can in fact take on e4, and then there is this new square available for the queen to then strike at the rook. Instead of rook to d1, what would have been better is to simply take on d5. And after bishop takes d5, immediately deploy the bishop on the long diagonal. It's true, white is still down a pawn, but this is a really strong bishop. An unopposed bishop, and one who is striking, for right now at least, indirectly at the heart of black's kingside structure, that middle pawn. This would have been better to immediately take on d5. An improvement even before getting to this position, again, this queen c2 move, if I'm just to compare a couple lines here, instead of that queen d4 move, if we did have if we did have queen c2 instead of queen to d4, the move played in the game, after queen c2, knight takes, suppose e4, and we have these similar moves. After b3, knight a5, we can play rook to d1 in this case without fear of knight takes e4. You'll notice this little trick of knight takes e4, bishop takes knight, queen f6. This is a much different story. This position here with the queen on c2 instead of over here on a4, this would allow a counterpunching bishop to b2, and there's no time to scoop up the bishop on e4. Just wanted to highlight a quick difference between the queen placements, queen on c2 versus the queen on where she eventually went, the a4 square. Okay, well anyhow, in the game it was queen d4, and fast forwarding some to this point, rook to d1 was a mistake. Aronian scoops up another pawn. And you could really, you could tell just by looking at the clocks. After you play a move like rook to d1, you have about 30 minutes on your clock. Aronian fires off knight to e4 in a blink, pretty much. And then you go into the think tank and your next move takes 17 minutes. So clearly, you don't spend 17 minutes on your very next move after this rook to d1 move. So this was just an oversight, it's a mistake to take. Okay, so tough road ahead here, clearly for white. But how exactly to convert a position where you're up material? Still have to be quite careful. This is a strong bishop, not to be underestimated. Striking at g7. Black gets some development in. Queen e7, b4. Black secures the c6 knight. Queen c2. f6. This is a good structure. This f6 g7 structure is a good one to try and negate the dark square bishop. Let him only see the f6 square instead of g7 at this point. Rook a to c1, rook a to d8, bishop f1. The knight is given a kick. He's now eyeing up the c4 square. Rook e1, white gets out of the pin, black gets out of the pin on the e file. Bishop d3, g5. I like this move. It strikes at the knight and defends h7. It's looking to get that move back. Knight g2. This pawn does a very good job in restricting the knight. Fianchetto knights, not too good. Knight c4. And we have f4. Knight takes bishop, queen takes bishop. And there really, as soon as this exchange happens, there really isn't too much going on. This is the one trump that white has here, the two bishops, the one positive, and as soon as the dark square bishop is eliminated, there's, white's game. Well, it's a long road ahead, let's just say, for white. Still being down material-wise, and there isn't this imbalance anymore. And you really can't, what other options are there here for white instead of f4? You can't move the bishop in the corner, you're just dropping more material. And if you, let's say, take the knight and try and play this position opposite color bishops and show, hopefully one day, that you can hold a draw in an opposite color bishop ending, well, there's so many pieces still on the board here. That is a long way off. We're a long way off from viewing this position as close to being drawn due to opposite color bishops. In such a situation, it's who can put to better use their bishop. And the light square bishop will find a fine home on d5, striking at f3. Moreover, after this capture, white is one step closer to queening. He was already passed on d5, but he can now potentially be easily supported with a b5 move, and we would have a case of a connected passed pawn, which is a great positive for black. We didn't have this capture. It was instead f4. Knight takes bishop, queen takes, bishop h3, a4, and this next move, this is I found this instructive in the game when I was reviewing what move might you play in this position. After a4, it is pretty clear what it is white's intention is to push b5 and disrupt the knight post. What would you do in this position? The computer calls for the move a5, and this would allow, what's the idea with a5 first off? With a5, you're planning to meet a move like b5 with knight b4. You simply move forward, improve the knight position, throw a punch. If white is capturing, there's a knight to a5. You're moving forward, capturing, and eyeing up the c4 square. This doing a move like this, a5, may now allow bishop to b5. And this is slightly uncomfortable, right? The knight is in a pin, and we may have some imbalance struck in the position, a passed a pawn. What's important to note in these positions, and it's a question I've been asked multiple times. I'd get comments from viewers who'd say, I get in good positions, like I'll be winning, I'll maybe be up a pawn, but I have a difficult time converting one positions, let's say. This decision here, black's next decision, is one that is trying to keep things clean. He's trying to play within a position where there is as little imbalance as possible. Black would really like to keep it where it's a light square bishop versus a light square bishop, or a knight versus knight, where there isn't some imbalance piecewise. Black would really like to have it where it is only, the only difference is black being up material, and that's it. Black being up these extra pawns. Playing a5 may start to get a little bit messy, is the short story. Past a pawn, there's maybe a little bit more calculation needed. Just throwing this out there. This is getting into what I'm hinting at here is, technique. How exactly to convert your advantages. What path should you choose? What environment should you create that will be best realized? Which environment can you create that will give you the easiest time to convert the full point? Black is not, in short, black is not so quick to give up the b5 square by playing a5, and it's certainly something that he must have been considering, this a5 advance. In the end, what did Aronian decide on? He went with h6. And this was another move that I thought I couldn't quite understand the point of it. It's there to, well, initially at least, but I believe I came up with one reason, at least, that I was satisfied with, and that is, it is securing g5. Okay, yes, we see this. But you may fire back, well, g5 already had support. Why do you need more support? The idea here is to be in a position to meet f takes g with h takes g, and keep the f pawn on f6 so that your king is a little bit more secure. Or in other words, black wants to be able to have an f6 g5 structure as defense for his own king. He would like to be able to step up to g7 as an example and not be fearful of diagonal checks. This is the home that black is trying to create for his own king, an f6 g5 structure. If h6 isn't played, if I'm making a nothing move, I don't know, just moving the rook back, I just want to emphasize, yes, okay, this is bringing the pieces to life. I see this, the opening up of the f-file, but the king is a little bit more exposed, is my point. Black is just securing his king. There's no rush. There's another point. This is a position where it's not critical. Black has to be really accurate or something. There's time for these quiet, slow, improving moves. There's good control in this position. So, h6 it is in this game, preparing to meet a capture with an h-pawn capture, I believe. b5, a takes, knight e7, queen f2, knight f5, and just making some improvements. It's tough to actually suggest anything here for white. It's a strong bishop, a knight, not too good of a piece. Really good coordination for the black side. Tough to suggest anything. King h1, rook e7. These are all benefiting black. These exchanges, the more simplified it is, the better, the more advantageous it is being up this material. Queen takes, queen to h5. What is wrong with queen takes here? It's a good question. Rook to d8, and this rook is coming to life. Queen e4, rook d4 is an idea. And this is a very active rook, a knight that is, he's still being ketoed, let's call it. This is a way to activate the black pieces. To be perfectly honest, I didn't really consider this line right here until this very moment. I didn't notice when I was reviewing for this game that this was even a possibility. But I'm just kind of eyeing up the computer as I go along with this one. This is the suggestion here, rook to d8, queen e4, and rook to d4. I guess this was an option here for white. It's only a pawn advantage for black. It's simplifying it some. Yeah, this variation is, I guess, forcing more material, the most valuable piece, to come off the board here. Queens. So white is trying to keep the most valuable piece on the board, we might say, instead of taking on d5. Okay, queen h5 strikes the bishop. Black gives it up. And now we have a monster knight on e3. Very tough to work around. You really can't work around a knight on e3. King g1, f5. If white is not careful, we can soon have knight g4. In fact, we could have knight g4 at this moment right here. If the knight is captured, here comes queen to e3, picking up the rook. Knight g4 could have been played here. After f5, this is big trouble. Knight g4 would cut off the queen, and you're not stopping queen to e3. Queen-knight tandem, and yeah, the white king, difficult road ahead for sure. So queen returns to e2, rook f6, queen b2, takes. We have a new file that is opened. Both kings are on an open file. They are quick to get off of them, or off of the open file. King h7, king h1. Looking at the g file squares now. This knight is really glued in there after d4. He's going nowhere. He doesn't need the support of a piece anymore. This is a very efficient defender for the knight, who is just excellently placed. Queen f3. Not much to say from here. It's just a matter of time before the white position is broken down. h3. There is no capture on c6 because of queen to b7. So white gets a new square for the king. Rook g6. Black enters, hitting the queen, hitting h3. Queen h5, queen d7, threatening a check, and then mate soon. So after king h2, we have a check. King back to h1, and after queen to d5, white resigned. There's nothing to do here. The threat is to simply move the rook and land a discovered check, and then drop the queen into g2 for mate. Give a check, but again, could actually move, block the check, and give a check. Bishop e4, and then queen here next. Yeah, not sure what more to say. There was miscalculation early on here with this rook to d1 move. Signing up, white was signing up for this material. Well, white was fine with giving up the pawn, capturing on d3 with the queen like this. But when it came to this point right here, rook to d1, serious error. Overlooked this idea of capturing on e4 and then getting out of the pin with queen f6. Again, better would have been a capture. And then deploying the bishop on the main diagonal right away, connecting rooks, and going from there. Well, with that, Aronian actually joins the leaders. He now has 2 points. Aronian is at 2. Anand and Karyakin are also at 2. Plenty of tournament to go. We will see, of course, what happens in round 4 and beyond. So that's all for this video. As usual, I hope you got something out of it, and feel free to leave any feedback in the comment section below. That's all for now. Take care. Bye.